Sir, distinguished colleagues, permit me to lead debate on the general principles of the Bitumen Development Commission of Nigeria Establishment Bill. The bill was first read, as leader clearly stated, in these chambers on 28 July 2023. The bill, among other reasons, seeks to restrict the activities of the Commission to the regulatory and coordinating functions specific as relates to development or bitumen in Nigeria. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, you may wish to know that the global in place bitumen and heavy oil resources are estimated to be 5.9 trillion barrels, 936 billion. More than 80% of those resources are found in Canada, United States, Venezuela, and Nigeria. Or specific, Mr. Senate President, Nigeria deposit of bitumen is second largest in the world. When passed, the objective of this bill includes, among others, the need to develop a legal framework for the regulation of bitumen development in Nigeria to prevent unconventional sources from taking advantage of recharge-enhanced application over the competitors, to lead innovation and resource base in development of bitumen in Nigeria, to ensure effective utilization of over 38 billion reserve of bitumen in Nigeria, and to promote economic diversification policy of the federal government. Mr. Senate President, in compliance with our Order 76 Sub 3, the Senate Standing Order 2003 as amended, a financial compendium showing the financial implication of the bill is attached. Mr. Senate President, before I conclude, I also attach here, distinguished colleagues, a slide in respect of bitumen in Nigeria. You will realize from the slide number 1 that Nigeria is missing currently from a market base of 110 billion global market of bitumen in the world. As a matter of fact, this country plays less than 1% of 110 billion bitumen market. On the third slide, you will see clearly in a specific case of Ondo State, as reported by the World Bank, $42 billion bitumen is deposited in that state without no exploration. And this is both in Agbabu, Oderele, Igbotako, Odeaye, and Ajibandele. On the second to the last page of the slide, you will see in the coloration there, distinguished colleagues, that the bitumen we have in Nigeria is of top high quality. In fact, mixed with petroleum. So you can see from this slide, you see the color of the bitumen as well as petroleum deposits alongside with them in Epe, Ogun State, Epe in Lagos, Ogun State, Ajibandele J4, in Ondo State, and in Edo. Now, what do we stand to gain if this bill is passed? One, Mr. Senate President, we have the financial gain in the slide that I put on the second page, and then we have economic gain, which I don't want to bother to explain. But it's very survive to say that Nigeria has second largest deposit of bitumen in the world, and it's important that we diversify this economy. It's important that we don't put heavy reliance on oil. I want to also direct the attention of our colleagues to the fact that only 30,000 kilometers of roads out of 200,000 have been addressed to in Nigeria. And bitumen is a function of this road functionality, and there is need for us to have this very importantly. Now, if we are having a budget, as we were discussing here yesterday, of about 26 trillion, now if we have 10% of the bitumen market, then of course we can fund our budget internally by ourselves. So we stand to gain a lot. Employment opportunity, exportation of bitumen itself, attending to over 200,000 kilometers of roads, having the material to use is very important, germane, to our economy. While concluding on the last slide we have here, then need for the establishment of the Act. Why do we need the Act? Number one, we need the Act because we have to prevent unconventional sources taking advantage of a recharge-enhanced application over competitors. Two, Nigeria has been unable to develop the industry despite enormous often said narrative, government diversify economy, government policy, but the fact remains that bitumen is quite critical, and of course, this economic need it. Now, the Petroleum Act, I wouldn't have need to bring this bill before your distinguished senators and Mr. President. I would not have need to bring this one, but for the fact that the Petroleum Act itself did not even mention bitumen. So the Petroleum Act excluded bitumen, and that is the need. We need to have this. You remember the gas, where it was separate from petroleum. We were able to have a lot of animal resources because the gas was developed. Nigeria with 36 billion reserve in bitumen require a regulatory framework, Mr. Senate President. Mr. President, there is no one single law today that talks about bitumen. We are $110 billion market for bitumen in Nigeria. Our road is 200,000 kilometers. Only 30,000 have been attended to. We need bitumen to make sure that these resources are actually looked into. And again, Mr. Senate President, innovation and strategy become a core value. By the time we have bitumen commission. We have bitumen in Akwa Ibom, as I've said. We have bitumen in Ondo. We have bitumen in Edo. We have bitumen in Edo and Ogun State. And nothing is happening here. And the need for regulatory framework is very, very important. The need to diversify the economy by instrumentality of law, not by directive, not by executive order, but by law, is also sacrosanct to our national development, Mr. Senate President. And lastly, Mr. Senate President, my very most distinguished colleague, this bill, if passed, will clearly classify, clearly bring clarity to the regulation framework and functions of Bitumen Development Commission of Nigeria to enhance business development in this country to conform with international best of practice. Mr. Senate President, even if we are to borrow money to develop bitumen today, there is no legal framework. So nobody can borrow us money when there is no any law. Even if we are to develop it and bring international skill, there is no law. We don't have any law. There is nothing can develop without law. And that is why this chamber is set up. This is why we are here by constitutional commandment to ensure that we do the needful, to ensure that we participate, Mr. Senate President, for 110 billion bitumen market in the world. How can we as a nation be having second largest depository of bitumen in the world without participating in the market of $110 billion? I will at this junction, respectfully ask for your indulgence, Mr. Senate President, my very distinguished colleagues, Senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to give your credence and support to the passage of this development bill in order to enhance that our country move forward economically. Thank you, Mr. Senate President, for the time and my distinguished colleagues.
The sponsor of this particular bill, and I have listened attentively to the aims and objectives of this particular bill. Mr. President, with profound respect, I have difficulties in accepting that the creation of a commission will by itself lead to exploration of our bitumen. I think, Mr. President, that we have to be conscious of increasing overhead costs and creating more and more commission at a time when we have this much talked about Orosai report, which already suggests that Nigeria federal government has too many commissions carrying out overlapping responsibilities. I hold the view with respect, sir, but it is not the absence of law that stopped Nigeria from exploiting bitumen and other solid mineral resources. It has to do with the will of the executive and the commitment of government to exploit all resources, whether liquid or solid. My worry is that at the time when we have very little resources, we are borrowing so much to meet overhead, to pay salaries, this cannot be seen to be enacting laws that will lead to creation of more commissions, which will create more jobs for the elite, but will have no impact on the issue of bitumen, exploration of bitumen. I think we must consciously find a way to shrink the size of overhead of the federal government. I am not convinced that it is absence of law that led to the situation. It is not about the statistics. It is not about the usefulness of bitumen. Of course we need it. Those countries that have it don't necessarily have all the laws that we have. We have been exploiting oil, we have been exploiting. We may one day, sir, come up to enacting a law to develop the production of farming of yam and gari. I believe that all of these things are desirable. I don't want to be misunderstood. But I'm not convinced that we need yet another commission that will have a chairman, directors, board members, etc. We provide for their overhead. We provide for everything. We increase the cost of running government, and that will not by itself translate to exploration of bitumen. I want my brother to understand, and I'm happy you mentioned that we have bitumen in Edo State. But I do not believe that we need a law for government to recognize the need to exploit those bitumen. I'm just concerned that we shouldn't be creating more commissions, more agencies, when we can get these things done and use the money for the overhead for the actual purpose. I thank you, Mr. President, for the privilege of allowing me.
Sincerely and unequivocally agree with Senator Jimo that bitumen is needed. But I think that we should go beyond this and also look at the fact that Nigeria used to have a refinery. The Kaduna refinery was made specifically for production of bitumen. And the way it was done was for you to, they were importing heavy oil from Saudi Arabia and then using it to produce bitumen. That Kaduna refinery, through our own, all the incongruities in our country is no longer working, does not mean that we should now say, let us just do something because of bitumen for roads in Nigeria. No, bitumen is nothing but heavy oil. Therefore, just like Senator Oshiomhole has said, I do not think that it is outside the remit of the Petroleum Act for us to create another institution just because of bitumen. It's nothing but heavy oil. It's part of petroleum, which means that all we need to do is to recognize it within our laws and then exploit it in the manner that exploitation is done of all our petroleum resources. The petroleum resources range in Nigeria is from the gas to condensate, from condensate to now bitumen. We are not going to have to create different regimes for the different areas just because of that. I think that as much as we agree that we need this, as much as we agree that there is so much international use and need for bitumen, we should not make bitumen, otherwise tomorrow somebody will also say, let us create an institution for high-power fuel oil, which is part of the petroleum industry. This is merely part of the petroleum industry and must be recognized as such. I so submit.
Because the issue of diversification of our economy is something that we have not paid so much attention to. Rather, I think we have paid so much lip service to that. The bitumen that we need, that we are talking about, is what we actually need in this country. It's with us, just like anything else. Instead of exploring and adverting our minds to what we have within the country, there's the rush to always go out to import. And so we neglect what we have, and we neglect to develop seriously those things that we have. And bitumen is one of them. And I believe very sincerely that the exploration of this item will greatly help in dealing with our deplorable road situation that perverts the whole country. There's no part of this country that do not have issues with bad roads. And one of the core products or elements in constructing our roads is bitumen, and it's a very expensive part of it. And of course, if we're able to do it right, foreign exchange, which we also need. We all know what is happening now with our naira to dollar. So we need more dollar to come into our economy. And so in consideration of this and many others, I sincerely will support this bill and ask that our colleagues should please support it in all entirety. Thank you, Mr. President.
An argument of our colleague, Jimo Ibrahim. Mr. President, in all, the emphasis is on the importance of bitumen and the need to develop bitumen and that industry. A major impediment to our economic growth is bad network of roads. And that is what has given rise to high cost of goods and services. So, bitumen is critical not only to the road network, but to the economic growth of Nigeria. Mr. President, I want to also say that there's need to diversify this economy. And the argument that we're establishing too many commissions may not be considered critical at this point, because we cannot just say because we don't want to create commissions, therefore, critical areas should not be looked into. I believe that the bitumen industry is very critical to our economic development, and as such, creating that commission is a way of paying adequate attention to the need to develop the bitumen industry. So I want to support this bill, and I want to also urge my colleagues to also support it. Thank you very much.
Cautioned about proliferation of agencies, a fact we all know, and also a fact that was further stressed by distinguished Senator Abaribe. But I support what the last speaker, my dear colleague here, said, that this bill is all about drawing attention to an important area that has been neglected, an area that has a potential of earning $110 billion, as stated in the statistics that has been distributed to us. And besides, we all know the crisis in the construction industry, particularly with respect to the scarcity and the prohibitive cost of cement and its byproducts. In all of this, Mr. President, there is need to support this bill so that it can go through the legislative process. And at the public hearing, I'm very sure, the experts, those in the petroleum sector and in the construction industry, will avail the relevant Senate committees and the National Assembly by extension of their expertise and their views as to whether any of the functions that are sought to be performed by this body is already covered by any existing legislation. And in that case, it may very well be that at the end of it, it may end up to be an agency or whatever. But that's a determination that we at this stage, in my view, cannot make. So I support that this bill be read a second time and referred to the relevant committees so that the experts can come and enlighten us. And after interacting with them, a determination will be made when we get the report as to whether we should go ahead with this bill as a commission or as an agency, or indeed whether the functions are already performed, or in other words, whether the field is already covered. But to dismiss it when we are dealing with a national crisis in the construction industry, a crisis of infrastructural development, and with a potential, in an area with a potential of attracting about 110 billion US dollars, just because we don't want to incur additional overheads. But that's also, as I considered earlier, a very valid point. But I think we should wait, tarry a while, defer our judgments, and allow the experts to guide us and participate in the legislative process so that we'll be better informed when we get the committee reports and make a determination whether this bill, as proposed, is superfluous, or indeed whether it should be scaled down to be an agency, and if so, which ministry it should be, and how it should be structured. I think those are determinations that can await the interaction with the experts. But all in all, I support the fact that this bill be read a second time. Thank you, Mr. President.
To be read the second time. It's actually lamentable that successive governments in Nigeria continue to pay lip service to the much-needed diversification of the country. Nigeria is said to be the giant of Africa. Giant in the sense that we have human capital in abundance, and we have a very vast area of land with a lot of natural endowments that have remained untapped. Bitumen, by the statistics we have here, is capable of contributing immensely to the economy of the country at a time when we have a lot of financial challenges. I think this bill is apt, this motion is apt, and we need to work with it to make sure that we contribute to the economy of the country. I am an apostle, or I believe in the use of concrete or pavements to work on roads, especially for those of us in the Niger Delta, where swift floods normally wash away our roads, the asphalted roads. But yet, a greater part of the country where flood does not affect can use bitumen to work on them. At a time when fuel subsidy has been removed, we need to work on our roads to get them effective. And so I'm in full support of the motion to read this bill the second time. Thank you, Mr. President.
I have noticed that there is a tide of opinion on this matter, but what cannot be disputed is the merits that we have to explore further the abundance of our wealth. This is very key because as a growing economy, there have been concerns raised about the need for us to diversify. It's very, very critical. Principally, I hold the opinion that this bill should be allowed to run its course. It doesn't mean that however it goes, that the debate has ended. Perhaps we need to expand the range of inquiry. Let others also contribute. If this bill goes towards a bigger body of opinion, where experts, where Nigerians can contribute more, I think there are some lessons to be learned. We are worried about this attention to a mono economy. It has not really helped us. And yet this country is so blessed. God, in his infinite mercies, has given us abundance of resources. I think there's a principle for us to explore further. See what comes out of the bowels of our earth and see what we can strengthen the flanks of our economy. To this extent, I don't think that we will lose anything if this bill is exposed to further inquiry. Let there be even more debates. Let the public come out with its own opinion. Let the inquiries be expanded. We will gain even further in that there may well be more discoveries from the abundance of our wealth and how we can regulate our behavior in terms of our investments. That is my own contribution, that the bill be allowed to run its course subject to public opinion. Thank you.
Professor Jimo Ibrahim for his well thought out lead debate, elucidating, enumerating the general principles and merits of this proposed bill, and also thank members for their divergent opinions and contributions, which of course enrich the entirety of the debate. And now I will put the question. Those in favor that this bill be now read a second time, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.